Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and it's quite possible that I may have cooked a little too hard when coming up with this build or attempting to make this build kind of a thing. It does still kind of function and still works well enough, but I'm really not sure it's quite worth it. In any case, the build and the skill I was trying to make work was Dagger based Blade Blast. So the Blade Blast that scales off of having weapon damage on your dagger or on two daggers, and then just utilizing it any way I could think of, any way I could see fit, and that was with cast on crit and Cyclone. So those saw blades that are popping off, that is the Blade Blast that does not require any lingering blades, anything like that. It's just scaling entirely off of a dagger. It turns into basically a physical ice nova, and it's then up to you what you do with it. You can, convert it or do impale or some shit. And in this case, I am full converting. So kind of the idea was to have a fat physical dagger to add a lot of physical damage because it gets 600% of your dagger's damage. I then converted a lot of it, but given that I'm getting that 600% fizz and I'm scaling with all this conversion and extra physical and elemental damage, I also decided maybe it's possible to wear a Mjolnir in the setup and then have Wave of Conviction doing some extra damage in it too. So the character is dual wielding a dagger and a Mjolnir. It does have some crazy dual wield nodes with some extra damage from dual wield, so it's a bit random. It has some dual wield block, and thusly it is at half the block cap, so 50% block I believe, and that's basically where a lot of my defense is coming from for this thing. And it's got one of the weirder passive trees that I've made in recent memory, so it does somehow come together to be kind of a build. But the question of is it really worth it kind of boils down to the skill itself, and ultimately this setup here has a Blade Blast scaling off of a physical dagger, and then if I just put Wave of Conviction in place of this Blade Blast, pretty much 1-for-1, I think I double my damage, which kind of means that there's probably not enough numbers in this Blade Blast to really justify it, or I did something wrong and there's a better way of scaling it. So I did think that maybe you could self-cast this thing and I don't know, something like that, but I did already feel like I put as much emphasis on the Blade Blast itself happening to begin with, and it did kind of, but then if I have some other kind of physical spell that's scaling in a similar manner, it will likely do just a lot more, and that's while still being this Battlemage setup. It is definitely one of the weirdest setups because it is kind of a Battlemage situation. I was using Spectral Helix for a while as well, and having the dagger itself actually do some damage and also do some leech, but then Cyclone's just a lot nicer. And you can see that we do have some issues here or there against some empowered mobs. Of course, I think a lot of people are having similar issues because empowered bosses and empowered certain monsters get pretty crazy, especially on the high end, and especially if you're a bit of a melee build. But one thing I can say, also the visual clarity with some of these new MTX, especially in Sanctum, is just strictly pay to lose, for the record. So yeah, do that to yourself if you feel like having things a bit cooler, but then just having a worse experience attempting to get through things. It's still fun, and I still use this big hand MTX because I kind of like it. Other than that, we are surfing around, and the surf feels really good on the new MTX. But the other thing that feels really good that I wanted to mention is Cyclone. So if you've yet to try Cyclone, this league, it does have less of a movement speed penalty, and as such it does feel better as a trigger, which is kind of funny because Cyclone's main use at the moment is being a trigger, and then what happened this league with the changes is it basically got better as a trigger, and I mean I guess it can technically be a bit better as a DPS as well, but all it really did was make it better as a trigger skill for various cast on crit, cast or channel builds, and it feels pretty good. So yeah, you can see that there is some damage behind this build. It's got something like, I don't know, maybe 10 million DPS. We're a bit melee. And I don't know, it's an okay build, and it's not too hard to put together, but then like, what is Dagger of blade blasting thing really doing? I don't know. It kind of works, it kind of looks cool, but then I'd maybe just have a bigger result if I did something else. With all that said, let me go ahead and show you what the character looks like and how I built it. So here is the character at the moment, old man testing his cock, Inquisitor, and we were testing all kinds of cast on crit in this one, because I kind of wanted to be cast on crit, but I kind of wanted to be self-cast. In the end, I did land entirely on cast on crit, and as you can see the setup here, based off of Blade Blast of Dagger Detonation, deals added spell damage equal to 600% of damage of equipped dagger. So with this type of thing, and with Battlemage, and with Spellblade, what it's basing itself off is the damage on the weapon itself, which isn't like additional damage coming from amulets or, you know, additional lightning, fizz, anything like that. It is basically just what's on the dagger there. So that 166 to 443 fizz. Once you factor that into this thing, it's just got 100% damage effectiveness, because as you can see, it doesn't have any additional anywhere on there. So 600% of that, you can imagine a top end of this 440 is going to be, you know, like an additional 2600 top end or something like that, which basically turns this skill into, I don't know, something like 2 to 3000 or 1500 to 3000 hit, and then it becomes a AoE Nova around your character, essentially. So if we get rid of that, I think you can see exactly what Blade Blast is doing, and that's it there. Without the microtransaction, just in case you want to see that, that looks something like this. And that is basically default area. So once you're first leveling with this skill, it actually has, you know, basically this amount of area early on, and it feels pretty freaking good. And then once you start putting on daggers, it feels pretty freaking good. The thing is that you kind of run out of scaling at a certain point. This is about as good of a dagger as you could get for just fizz scaling. And, you know, once you get that, gem levels don't really matter anymore. And, you know, getting like additional levels and stuff doesn't really matter that much. And you kind of run out of scaling, I'd say, is kind of the issue. But we get this far, we make a dagger like this. It's very similar to a binos, so if you just want to have a similar setup, you can have a binos in your Blade Blast setup. A lot of other people are playing Volcanus as well. That's a pretty easy one to do. White Wind is another fairly easy one, but they're going to be very different styles of build compared to what I'm doing here for Flat Fizz. Something like this, or a binos, but if we use a binos, you can't use Utulas, so bear that in mind. Anyway, you're getting all this Flat Fizz, and then applying it to this dagger thing, but I'm also utilizing Battlemage from Inquisitor, which also applies just our main hand weapon damage to our spells. So if I have my dagger in my main hand, it is then also applied once again to Blade Blast of Dagger Detonation. So you can imagine it's 700% instead of 600%. So it's not a huge addition to Blade Blast, but it's a pretty big addition to Wave of Conviction, because Wave of Conviction is 330%, and it's currently getting no additionals. So Battlemage for Wave of Conviction in this build is something like a 30 or 40% increase, because it becomes a pretty large additional amount of fizz based off of that 330. So anyway, basically what I did was try to make this build based off Blade Blast, but then I thought, what if I offhanded a Mjolnir? Do I just get a second spell for free while still triggering this Blade Blast the way it is? And essentially, yes. So at the cost of my offhand, instead of having like a shield or some shit, I put on a Mjolnir, and then I can shit out Waves of Conviction that are also scaled off a Battlemage that give it a lot of extra damage. And in the end, the result is essentially something like this. So Wave of Conviction is hitting for about 5 million DPS, and my Blade Blast is hitting for something like, we have to simulate this additional damage itself, something like this, like 3 million. So it's about half, let's say. And this is on a 3-link for the Mjolnir, so crit damage and conk effect with Wave of Conviction, whereas over here we are using crit damage, Cyclone, Blade Blast, cast on crit, and inspiration. if we put Wave of Conviction in place of this Blade Blast and just have two different Waves of Conviction, it's, yeah, going to be probably like almost double the damage of this Blade Blast, but it'll be mechanically a bit worse because you're just shooting two Waves of Conviction out. Actually, I'm not even sure you can have a second Wave of Conviction. You might have to do something else. Either way, it's just, I don't know, it's weird doing this sort of thing. It still worked, and yep, if you liked what you saw, you can definitely try and copy a character like this. It might be a bit tough to put together. We have to do a lot of conversion on this one, so we have gloves that have conversion, a Lyra based conversion, and then Lyra? Ashling, I think, just betrayal conversion. It's not Ashling, actually. So lightning conversion for full conversion with the implicit and the prefix there. The passive tree goes up here so that we can get max shock, so we can get more conversion as well up here. And on top of that, I'm using a replica heat shiver because I've got 65% shock effect. I get like an extra, 30 lightning is cold, and most of my damage is lightning, so we are getting a bunch from that. And then I'm just using some resists and stats and stuff, and brittle on the boots, and plus fizz, and stacking some level of strength and int as a typical Inquisitor build would to get lots of crit, and then ignore enemy res. And then we've got that node there. I had to path all the way over here to get Unwavering, because without Unwavering, Cyclone, while it's blocking and while you just get stunned, it constantly interrupts you. So because I'm dual wield block, and I've also got this cool node here, 60 damage while wielding two different weapons, since I am doing that. Yeah, it's a weird passive tree in the end, one that I hadn't really done before. And I'm also utilizing the new charm-based system to get 12 fizz as extra damage of a random element. So I've got one there, I've got one there with block. This melee hits which fortifies actually does work for me for my cast on crit, because I deal a substantial amount of cyclone damage as well. So I'm actually getting some fortify action there. And prior to my current Watcher's Eye, which is giving some leech over here, so Vitality Leech, that's basically all the Watcher's Eye is doing. Prior to that, I did spec into Night Stalker, and that attack leech and mana leech from attacks was actually helping sustain me as well, given that I kind of actually do some attack damage. So we've got some aura stuff, we've got some mana stuff, the charms. If I had one more charm, if I, found the boss, I would have another 12 fizz extra there. But I've also got the jewel that has 12 fizz as extra with some res and block. So we've got that too. And yeah, that's basically the character. Took a long time to come up with this pass tree because I kept having to min-max and make it a bit different, and it works well enough. With the Natulas, we can end up getting close to 6k life if we level up a few more times. The coloring on it is kind of hard though. Ideally, I 6-link it and I have a different red color there, either a green or a blue. Hypothermia or something is a good 6-link, but yeah, I have to recolor it again and then Varici it again, because getting 4 or 5 off colors is pretty tough on this thing. But other than that, that's all I'm doing here. Mjolnir with Wave of Conviction, and a dagger that has a bunch of fizz. Just crafted this thing using Harvest, by the way. So some fizz hybrid on there, and then just fizz rerolls basically until you get a flat fizz roll, and then craft your own fizz on there. The attack speed is nice, just makes it a bit, faster and hit a bit better, but it's not mandatory. Most of the character up till about level 90, I was using this dagger with no attack speed, and it was just fizz, and that's it. Since Cyclone still hit pretty fucking fast without an attack speed, given that we're dual-wielding, scaling a bit of attack speed, that's the result. And then, yeah, Surfboard feels pretty good. It's one of the new MTX from the supporter packs. Likewise, with the hat, a lot of people have been asking about that one. That's the $100 supporter pack, and you can just make it, that tier of hat permanently if you feel like it. But aside from that, just a bunch of auras, and that's all the reservation. I will let you guys figure that out if you feel like doing something like this. I'm not too sure it was that worth it. It's not a bad build, but it feels like it's missing a bit of something. Other than that, yeah, I mean, it'll work. It'll be a cycling character, and you can by all means get through quite a lot of fun stuff with it, but it might need something else to go all the way through to endgame. The deepest of endgame. Like, you know, Ubers and stuff. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video and the build. I'm going to move straight into another new build because there's lots of new builds to do. So some characters I'm only going to spend like 2 or 3 days on. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.